Taliban has no real opposition, either within the country or outside. And it was time that we stepped up the relationship from the technical mission that we had to a regular diplomatic mission.
The current leadership, the Taliban, um, can we trust them? You've known Taliban commanders, you've interacted with Taliban commanders.
We got stray messages from the Afghan Taliban relayed through different quarters that basically emphasizing that India should never consider them as Pakistani puppets. You ask the Afghan, or you ask the Taliban, they say the Pakistanis didn't help us out of the goodness of their heart. They were gaining from us.
All Pakistani generals are very careful that nothing should happen in Pakistan's Punjab province. So when Kargil war that I covered, NLI troops were killed. They were all from POJK and also northern areas. So they didn't mind 200, 300 being buried by India or 800 dying. It was okay for them. The only body they asked for, you were JS spy even that time.
Sher Khan.
Sher Khan. When they sought a body of a Pakistani officer who was killed and buried by India, they said exhume him and return it to us because he was apparently from Pakistan's Punjab province. There's a massive spike in tension between Pakistan and Afghanistan, and India-Afghanistan relations have steadily improved in the recent past. In fact, Indian embassy has reopened in Kabul. Afghanistan, of course, is seeking much more assistance from India. What is the future of India-Afghanistan relationship? Remember, right from our childhood and for generations, we've heard of the Kabuli Wala. Civilizational ties between the two countries and the people. But is this just about Pakistan and countering Pakistan's state-sponsored radical Islamist terror? Or is there a far more deeper effort that's being made both by India and by Afghanistan? Joining us on the Chakravyuh Podcast is someone who understands the region, the people, and the subject very intimately. I want to introduce Ambassador Vivek Katju, former ambassador to Afghanistan, someone who dealt with Afghanistan and Pakistan and Iran as a joint secretary, was there. I must also tell our viewers, Ambassador Katju was in Kandahar when IC-814 happened and when Indians were released and brought back. I must also tell you, he's someone late Pakistani military dictator Pervez Musharraf blamed for the Agra summit. And I want to, during the course of this conversation, try and understand why you were a joint secretary at that point of time and we were all covering the Agra summit in Agra, but Musharraf seemed to have singled you out. We'll have that conversation, sir. But if we were to begin by talking about India-Afghanistan relationship and the recent visit of Amir Khan Muttaqi, the Taliban foreign minister, to India, how would you view that, sir?
I think it was a path-breaking visit. It has re-established our ties fully with the effective rulers of Afghanistan, which is now the Taliban. The Taliban has no real opposition, either within the country or outside. And it was time that we stepped up the relationship from the technical mission that we had to a regular diplomatic mission.
You've been recommending it for a very long time. It's happened now in 2025, but you've been recommending it for close to a decade now.
Well, I have an interest in Afghanistan, and I was following events in Afghanistan even after my retirement. Before that, I didn't deal with Afghanistan directly, but I had a number of friends in the Afghan Republic. And I must confess to you that I was getting more and more disenchanted with the way the Republic's leaders, principally the two presidents, were leading Afghanistan. I was also getting very disappointed with the manner in which the American policy was being implemented in Afghanistan. Each country, Gaurav, has to grow organically. You can't impose systems from outside. Systems develop according to the environment and the cultural traditions, the political ethos of a country. The Americans and NATO and the West thought that they could bring in justice from, say, Italy, police from Germany, the army they could fashion, the Americans could do it, drug eradication could be done by the British. Now, that's not the way countries develop. So, by about 2016, I was reaching the conclusion that the leadership of Afghanistan, principally the first President Karzai
Hamid Karzai.
and later President Ashraf Ghani, were not showing the perspicacity. And I hate to say this because I know them well. I have in many ways admiration for them, but they were not showing the kind of leadership that was required to build to Afghanistan into a modern nation state.
Okay. The current leadership, the Taliban, um, can we trust them? You've known Taliban commanders, you've interacted with Taliban commanders. Our impression of the Taliban is when IC 814 was hijacked, was on the tarmac in Kandahar, but we were only looking at images. You were interacting with them, you secured the release of our people. So, our impression is that these are guys who are very close to Pakistan and, they'll stab us in the back.
Uh, Gaurav, international relations always and interstate relations proceed on the basis of interests. They don't proceed on the basis of trust. There are moments in time when interests coincide, and because they coincide, an entity and a state or two states work together. Let's take the Second World War. I think it's a prime example. You had the Soviets
Yeah.
and the
Western Bloc coming together.
Western Bloc were together against Nazi Germany. What happened almost immediately after the Second World War was won by the Soviets and the Americans and the British? They fell apart and the Cold War ensued. So they were together when the interests coincided, and they went away when the interests diverged.
But
And so with I'll just add one sentence. With the Taliban, there was a period when our interests were not coinciding; they were diverging, and we were close to the Northern Alliance. We were then close to uh, the uh, the Afghan Republic. We were helping the Afghan Republic in every which way we could. Uh, at that stage too, and this is significant, and this is something which led me to begin writing from February of 2017, that we should start talking to the Taliban. Because all through the period that I've dealt with Afghanistan, we got stray messages from the Afghan Taliban relayed through different quarters that basically emphasizing that India should never consider them as Pakistani puppets.
are they?
Well, they've demonstrated they are not. And that is the point they were making. And then I think beginning from about 2015, Taliban leadership in Doha, those who were in track 2 circuits, etc., whenever they met Indians in the strategic community, always sought them out and tried to convey through them messages to Delhi that, look, again emphasizing the same thing, that they were independent, that there was a reason why they were dependent on the Pakistanis, but that India should never think that this dependence would continue or that they were hostile to us.
And if we were to go back to history, and you've written about this, when Pakistan was created, the only country in the world to oppose the creation of Pakistan was Afghanistan.
Indeed. And there was a reason for it. And that reason is still alive today too. The reason is that the British literally forced the Durand Line, which the Pakistanis now say is the international border between Afghanistan and Pakistan, in which the Afghan successive governments, all governments who've been in Kabul since 1947 and earlier, have never accepted that as the border. So, in 1947, prior to the departure of the British, uh, the Afghans told the British that, look, this agreement for the Durand Line was between the government of Afghanistan and between Amir Abdul Rahman Khan, who was then the ruler of Afghanistan, and it was done in 1893, and uh, British India. And since the British were leaving, this agreement fell. And therefore, Afghanistan and its should be restored to what were its original boundaries, which were really along the Indus. You see, the Pathan, and this is interesting, the Pathan or the Pashtun has always thought that the land between the two rivers, which is the Indus and the Amu Darya or the Oxus, is actually their
Afghanistan.
land.
Yeah.
No, their land.
Their land. Yeah.
Now, this is not agreed to by the other ethnicities in Afghanistan. It's not accepted by the Tajiks. It's not accepted by the Hazaras or the Uzbeks. But this is instilled in the Pakistan,
Afghan.
in the Pashtun mind, including the Pashtuns. If I dare say, if you scratch them deep enough, the Pashtuns of Pakistan.
Yeah.
One last point. There is a contradiction between people who are on opposite banks of the Indus, which is once you cross the Indus towards Afghanistan, then the people become different, customs become different, ways of life become different. And even though the Pakistan state may have co-opted these people, in the Pashtun mind, as indeed, if I may say, in the Baluch mind and the Sindhi mind, Pakistan at the end of the day is considered as a Punjabi-dominated country.
Which it is.
Which it is.
Their army, the bureaucracy, the intelligence agencies.
Absolutely, absolutely. So these contradictions are there, and but it's very interesting that while later, of course, the Afghans accepted Pakistan, but then at one stage when Dawood Khan was prime minister, later he he ousted King Zahir Shah, his cousin, in a coup in 1973, but he was prime minister between 1953 and 1963. He started a movement for Pashtunistan,
Yes.
which riled the Pakistanis no end.
That is something that we should actually be looking at. When I would think India and Afghanistan, the people of India and Afghanistan, apart from the civilizational ties that we've had, should be very, very thick, and that should give a nightmare to Pakistan at all times. Something that's happening right now.
You see, the Pakistanis have been worried, I think unnecessarily so, that they'll get caught in a pincer between India and Afghanistan. That their eastern frontiers, which are with India, and their western frontiers with Afghanistan, will both if there's can both become live and cause enormous problems, that they'll then get caught in this two-front situation. And that is why it has been the historical endeavor of all governments in Pakistan
Yes.
to try to control Kabul, whoever is in Kabul's foreign policy, especially its India policy. And all governments in Kabul have refused. If you notice, only recently, I think 2 days ago, Mullah Yaqub,
Yes.
who is the son
Umar's
of Mullah
son.
Omar and now the defense minister, he said, we are independent.
Yes.
We'll have ties with India, we'll have ties with Pakistan, but we are not going to be, so the indication was that we are not going to be controlled by anyone.
So, what do you make of General Faiz Hamid, then DGISI, when Taliban took over Kabul? He air dashed to the Serena Hotel in Kabul and was having chai and saying, all will be well, indicating that he will be the viceroy or Pakistan will once again control Afghanistan. And apparently, I think recently Khwaja Asif or somebody in Pakistan said they gave bulletproof cars to the leadership in Afghanistan, saying now you require all the protection because now you are running the government to Taliban.
Uh, you know what Faiz Hamid did in 2021 reminded me of what Mia Nawaz Sharif had done in 1992. In 1992, Najibullah fell.
Yes.
And the Mujahideen groups who were then in Peshawar, their government was to be formed. And who went there? Nawaz Sharif, who was then the Prime Minister.
Yes.
He had no business to go there.
Yes.
And once, I can share with you, I won't name him, I asked a former DG of the ISI on the margins of a track 2 event, I said, if आपने मियाँ साहब को रोका नहीं, क्यों जाने दिया? इसका क्या असर क्या पड़ा होगा अफगानों पे? ठीक है आपने उनकी मदद की, लेकिन अब उनका मुल्क आजाद, उनके लिए आजाद हो गया था, उनकी हुकूमत बन रही थी, आपकी मौजूदगी वहां क्या कर रही थी? कि लग रहा था कि जैसे मुल्ला कि मियाँ साहब उनको एक किस्म से एक राय दे रहे हैं कि किस तरह बनाए, कैसे आगे बढ़े,
कि वो उनका वैसल स्टेट है कि
हाँ कि आप
आधिपत्य
हाँ
है
कि
वहाँ
आप
पर।
बिल्कुल। तो फैज हमीद की भी गलती थी,
हाँ,
and the swagger with which Faiz Hamid was behaving, and that riles the Afghan the most, especially the Pashtun. He is very independent minded. He says, I will accept everything, but I'll not accept that I'm subservient to anyone. So that happened. So Faiz Hamid made this cardinal error, and now what does Khwaja Asif say? कि ये एहसान फरामोश
ये
है.
एहसान फरामोश है.
No, what ehsan? If you ask the Afghan, or you ask the Taliban, they say the Pakistanis didn't help us out of the goodness of their heart. They were gaining from us
Financially also.
financially. I'll share this with you. When I went to Kabul as ambassador in 2002, I thought that there'll be great goodwill for Pakistan because they had given refuge to millions of Afghans at the time of their crisis when they went across.
And for decades.
And for decades. And to my great surprise, I found that almost all of them had very harsh words to say about Pakistan. So I asked a group of young people who had come to me to the mission. And I'll share another story with you, which perhaps very few people know. So I asked these people, I said, look, you studied there, etc. So you should be happy with you. I'm sure you have friends in
Muslim
Pakistan,
brothers
etc.
and blah.
No, I don't think it was Islam. I said, so much. I said, look, you were there, you were in school with these people, etc. And all of them said, Ki Safir Saab, because that's what they say, Safir Saab, you don't know how we were treated.
Yeah.
We will never forget how badly we were treated. And on cricket, and I think this is something which your viewers might find interesting. One day I was in office and my staff told me that the president of the Afghan Cricket Association wants to see you. So I got baffled. I said, Afghan Cricket Association, football, yes, but cricket? So I said, so the gentleman came in and he sat down, and my first question to him was that since when have you people started playing cricket? So he said, Safir Saab, our boys studied in Pakistan, etc. So they took to cricket, and now cricket is a popular game. So I said, what can I do for you? So he said, can you get us some kits? Can you get us, matting and such things? So I said, do you have a ground? So he said, we'll make a ground, but we want to start cricket. So I wrote to Delhi that, can you send, and Delhi, with great alacrity, I was sent a lot of cricket playing with stuff, pads, just normal equipment. And I sent it to them, and that began. So it was interesting that they didn't think of going to Pakistan to ask their help. They came to us.
When I talk to their army officers who were training with us, they don't want to train with the Pakistan army. They want to train with the Indian army.
In fact, during the Republic's period, that was a big problem because the Pakistanis always complained to Karzai
Yeah.
that why are you sending your officers to India? Why not to us?
Yeah.
And the simple thing was that the Afghans didn't want to go there. They wanted to come here. I recollect once going in, I think in 2015, to give a lecture at the IMA after retirement. And the commandant called 2 or 3 young officers, young officer cadets, and he said, meet them. They are from Afghanistan. So we had a little chat, and it was wonderful talking to them. And I said, are you comfortable? He said, yes, very much so. We feel very at home and we are very happy in the academy, etc. So there's been this long contact.
And the cricketers train here.
Yeah, the cricketers then I think were given. Yes, and then I think at one stage I also wrote to people in Delhi. I said, can you ask the BCCI if they could help? So the BCCI said, yes, we'll do whatever we can. And I think then my successors took this up and they got a ground in Dehradun and then a ground in Greater Noida. So in a sense...
and I've interacted with them, when they were training in Greater Noida. And it's great fun to interact with them. And, if you were to look at our dislike for Pakistan's state-sponsored radical Islamist terror, they seem to hate it even more.
I say, look, Afghanistan cricket is now a big thing. It's given them a sense of national pride because their team is playing
extremely
doing well. Yeah. Rashid and these chaps are first rate. Rashid as a bowler is outstanding. So, if you just a few days ago, 3 of their cricketers were killed, and they called them. Come along. I mean, the Pakistanis, and I haven't seen a note of regret in Pakistan that look.
So what is this? Is this that Punjabi Muslim arrogance that comes that theek hai, maar diya to maar diya, Pashtunon ko maar diya to maar diya?
I think there's a kind of hubris that Punjab is Pakistan, that the other ethnicities and the other provinces are much smaller and really they don't at the end of the day matter.
Because of population.
Because of population, resources, the army's main recruiting grounds are still Punjab, the officer class is still Punjabi. There are a number of other officers, Pashtuns, etc. But at the end of the day, it's Punjab. And I know because I've been told by some Pakistani retired officers, of course, that Musharraf, you mentioned him earlier in the conversation, that Musharraf was always very conscious of his Muhajir background. And therefore he tried to compensate it. To my mind, he tried to compensate it by being even more aggressive towards us.
But tell me something, you spoke of hubris. Is Pakistan, and especially under Asim Munir, I would love to know from you, what is your reading of Asim Munir? Right now, even Musharraf was very careful, or all Pakistani generals are very careful that nothing should happen in Pakistan's Punjab province. So when Kargil war that I covered, NLI troops were killed, they were all from POJK and, also northern areas. So they didn't mind 200, 300 being buried by India or 800 dying. It was okay for them. The only body they asked for, and you were JS spy even that time.
Sher Khan.
Sher Khan. When they sought a body of a Pakistani officer who was killed and buried by India, they said exhume him and return it to us because he was apparently from Pakistan's Punjab province.
No, that was also because the Indian, and this was the professionalism of the Indian army, that the Indian commander who was commanding the place where Sher Khan was fighting praised his bravery and valor.
In fact, I reported it that time.
And he said when the Pakistani plane came and to take his body, along with the coffin, he sent a letter to the commander of Sher Khan's unit praising his valor. He said, this is in the finest traditions of military professionalism. We are soldiers and we respect other soldiers. and we respect the valor shown by an enemy soldier. And so he praised that. And, and there I think lies the difference between the Indian army and the Pakistan army. I don't think the Pakistan army would ever do a thing like this.
No.
When here was, and I hope, and I'm sure, and I'm confident that the Indian army will always maintain this tradition.
But if I could, come back to the point that right now, Pakistani media is reporting, or at least their social media is reporting, that 180 people were massacred in Pakistan's Punjab, in Murid and Lahore, in the Tehreek-e-Labbaik protest, and just happened just weeks ago. I think some foreign channel reported that the death toll is much higher. Now, under Asim Munir, hundreds are being killed in Pakistan's Punjab, and that country is still asleep, or they're walking dead. It could happen in Baluchistan, it could happen in KPK, it could happen in Sindh or POJK, but now it's happening in Punjab.
I think in the Tehreek-e-Labbaik, they have let loose a monster. And I think it was unanticipated by them. And mind you, these protests were for what? For Gaza.
Yeah.
They were not even for the Rasool.
Yeah.
Because the Tehreek-e-Labbaik, as you know, is dedicated to the idea that the Prophet Muhammad is the last prophet, and that with him the prophethood ends, and the last message is contained in the Quran, the Holy Quran. Now, so it wasn't for them.
Yes.
The earlier protests were all to make this point. In fact,
Correct.
once when the ISI had to intervene,
Yes.
when they had blocked the
Faizabad
capital.
interchange.
Faiz Hamid, in fact, is the guy who intervened and was
Yes.
on behalf of the army with these chaps. You're right, exactly, the interchange. At that stage, they were protesting against something that the Nawaz Sharif government had done in the oath or something like that,
Sir.
where there was no ambiguity, but they read it as an ambiguity that had crept in if the last prophet, that the prophethood of the Prophet Muhammad, and that was the last prophethood, was being questioned. So they went up in great protest, but this time it was totally different. So I think they've let loose this particular genie. It's out of the bottle, and it's going to cost them.
It will cost them in Pakistan's Punjab province.
In Punjab province.
Because if they've killed more than 180 people by some accounts, more than 200 by other accounts.
And the Pakistan media has put a lid on it.
Yeah. But the Pakistani, their establishment, their state, I consider them very timid if they're unable to speak truth to power. If hundreds are being killed in Pakistan's Punjab province and yet they're silent, then it's like they're walking dead. I want to then understand from you, Pakistan is bleeding within. I believe there have been deaths very recently in Baluchistan, hundreds of deaths in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Afghanistan is giving them grief. They don't have good relations with Iran. And, Operation Sindoor is still on. So what is Asim Munir gloating about? And, is this riding a tiger that he will end up in the belly of the tiger? Or does he think that America and China will bail him out?
The latter. I think I think one should always be realistic, because one must always especially be realistic about states that are inimical to us. Pakistan, if you look at it, is a large country. It has 240 million people. It has nuclear weapons. And as I often say, none of the great powers want a nuclear Somalia.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare for them. The army is, in their thinking, Western thinking, and deeply entrenched Western thinking going back to the 1950s, the army is the only stable institution in Pakistan.
And isn't that true?
And it's true. It's true. So the army chief is always been made much of. And Asim Munir is the current army chief who's appointed. I dare say he's appointed himself as field marshal. I mean, if I were he, I would be deeply embarrassed becoming field marshal. Uh, why do I say this? Because the operations as they were not ground operations.
Yeah.
He was the army chief. Whatever operations took place were aerial operations.
And they got hammered there.
So by the 10th, it was clear, 10th May morning, as you know, Gaurav, better than I do, it was clear that we were able to demonstrate our air superiority in an unmistakable way. We struck 9 of their airfields. In doing so, we bypassed all their air defenses. And only recently, I think about a week or 8 days ago, the DGMO, Lieutenant General Ghai, gave a wonderful presentation of
He
what
did.
what we achieved, and this synergy between different wings of the defense forces and of the political and civil leadership, and how it operated flawlessly. So by the 10th, if any objective observer knew that the Indian Air Force had achieved air superiority. Despite all that, here's the army chief who becomes a field marshal. It's a joke.
Yeah.
Frankly, I doubt whether in the annals of military history has there been ever such a joke.
Yeah. And yet he continues to threaten India. Despite 9 terror bases, including Muridke and Bahawalpur, being targeted, and who knows that better than you, as JS Spy, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran desk, that Muridke and Bahawalpur bled us for decades. And this is the first time they've been targeted. What was your reaction when you heard Muridke and Bahawalpur had been targeted?
I thought they were very significant moves by us. They were significant because we decided that we are going to strike them with precision. We limit collateral damage. And I think the Air Force was able to achieve just that.
But did you
So-
ever think when you were JS Spy, when the when IC 814 happened, were you there that as JS Spy that time? You were when Kargil war happened. So we had 500 lives lost then. Then we had Rupan Katyal being killed in IC 814 hijack. We had Parliament attack that happened. Akshardham temple that happened. When our troops were amassed after the Parliament attack, sir, what hurts me the most that two nuclear weapon states are eyeball to eyeball, and then they attacked a military station in Kaluchak and killed army families. Little children were massacred by Pakistani terrorists, and we did nothing.
I was JS IPA, as we used to call it then.
Sir.
PI was the renaming of the division, so it was IPA. And that's the word which comes to me
Sir.
easily. Between 1995 and August of 2001, the last official matter that I handled was the Agra summit, and after that, I went as ambassador to Myanmar.
Yes.
I was there for 6 months and then was sent to Kabul as ambassador to Afghanistan after 9/11. All that happened. So I saw Kargil. I think when Kargil, when we became aware of what the Pakistanis had done in Kargil, they were interdicting the road, as you know, from the Kargil heights. I just couldn't understand its strategic purpose. And I must confess to you that for a good 24 hours, I kept scratching my head. I said, what are these fellows thinking? Are they thinking that the Indian army and the Indian government will just allow them to stay there? Don't they know us? as neighbors, they should know us. That we will do everything in our power, and it is in our power to eject them from there. The situation is very tenuous. So, what is all this about? And every which way that I analyzed it, because at that stage there was no NSCS.
Yes.
Really, I mean, NSCS was in its infancy; it was coming. So the division played a little bit of a coordinating role, and people looked up to the division. So when I was being asked that, what do you make of it, and I kept telling my superiors that you'll have to give me more time, because every which way, every avenue of analysis that I adopt comes stuck, because it doesn't make sense. And later on, if you read Naseem Zehra's book, and it's an excellent book on Kargil, she says the Pakistan army too, because it was hatched, it was clique with Musharraf after Musharraf became chief. They also scratched their head, and on the track 2 circuit, whenever I've asked some of the Pakistani retired generals, I said, what were you guys thinking? सोच क्या रहे थे तुम?
they thought कि सियाचिन जैसे इंडिया ने कर लिया, they could do nothing.
अब वो कह रहे थे कि भाई पूछो मत यार. एक ने मुझसे कहा, यार विवेक पूछो नहीं, गलती हो गई. और फिर क्या क्या उसने अल्फाज इस्तेमाल किए जिन्होंने इसका मुशर्रफ के लिए तो नहीं, लेकिन औरों के लिए जिन्होंने इसका अंजाम दिया था, वो मैं उसको रिपीट भी नहीं कर सकता.
कर दीजिए सर, आज कर ही दीजिए, कुछ तो बता दीजिए हमको कि नो, बट was नवाज शरीफ on board?
I'll say this, that Nawaz Sharif, for a short period of time, was under an illusion. A very short period of time. But then I think his military aides, who were objective, and that's in Naseem Zehra's book too, and I believe that's correct. They told him that, look, a big mistake has been made. The Indians will not accept this. The Indians have all the firepower they need. They'll have to pay a price, and we paid a terrible price in blood, but they'll get us, and defeat will come to us ultimately. So he got to know very quickly that the game was up. And then, of course, came the tapes, and you know the story of the tapes, etc. So Nawaz Sharif, there was, I believe, a brief period. I can't speak more on this, but I can say this, and perhaps it's the first time I'm saying this. There was a brief period, a very brief period, when the man was under some kind of an illusion. Because he is very committed. The Sharifs are very committed to Kashmir. Let's never doubt that. Just as the Pakistan army is committed to Kashmir, the rest of the political class too, the Sharifs in particular, and Nawaz's commitment to Kashmir is, as they call it, is very deep.
So all this dosti dikhawa is only dikhawa?
No, his view is that whatever we can do in trade, etc., with the Indians, let's do it. But that will not be at the cost of Kashmir.
Basically, पैसा कमा लो हिंदुस्तान से, लेकिन फिर ठोक दो हिंदुस्तान को.
You see, that is where there is a debate in Pakistan. The debate is that if you open up trade with India, then there will be such forces unleashed that what they call the Kashmir cause will necessarily decline. Therefore, you must keep the doors closed. Nawaz, on the other hand, I believe, thought that he could do both. I don't think you can do both.
No.
But Nawaz thought that he could.
So you were saying, some people were saying very nasty things about Musharraf and FCNA and Mangla Corps Commander and the others. क्या बोल रहे थे उनके बारे में?
मैं इतना ही कहूँगा कि कुछ ने कहा, यार बेवकूफ थे. अब छोड़ो उस बात को, बेवकूफ थे. I won't say more.
But बेवकूफ तो थे, sir.
Of course थे. नसीम जहरा की किताब में साफ है, वो पढ़िए, कोई भी पढ़े उसको, वो लगता है कि वो उनसे इससे ज्यादा कोई कि आप
बट
सोच
वही बेवकूफी पाकिस्तान आर्मी के डीएनए में है, मतलब यही बेवकूफी ये आसिम मुनीर राज कर रहा है, मतलब हिज अटैक
भाई,
ऑन पहलगाम, nothing can be stupider after you've seen India's response post surgical strike post Uri and Balakot post Pahalgam post Pulwama.
I tracked this after the Jafar Express attack. Jafar Express attack, if I recollect correctly, took place on the 11th of March.
Yeah.
I wrote an article on the 21st of March, which was carried in
Yes, I remember reading that article. The कि
where,
कुछ होगा.
हाँ, कि कुछ होगा, कि ये कुछ करेंगे. Why? Because they've deluded themselves that India is behind it. तो ये
And there was
कुछ
no evidence to suggest India is
नहीं
behind
कुछ
it.
नहीं था, but ये भाई, if you want to delude yourself, you can delude yourself. Gaurav, who can help you? दिमाग में आ गया, फितूर आ गया तो आ गया. वो तो आसिम साहब के मन में फितूर आ गया कि हिंदुस्तान ने किया, when we have nothing to do with it. भाई बलूचियों से जो उनकी जो मुश्किल है वो आज की है, वो 1947 से.
सही बात है.
The Baluchis have, if I were to say that what is the unfinished business of partition, it is Baluchistan. The Pakistanis say it's J&K. It's not J&K, it's Baluchistan. The Baluchis have always felt that they were not part of the Indian princely state system.
And they were not.
And they were not. And that they were, it's ironic that Jinnah was their council, was the council of the Khan of Kalat. Till August 4th, 1947, they were giving assurances.
Yes.
The Muslim League was giving assurances to the Khan that you will be more or less independent. And then on August 14th, everything changed. So, do you think the Baluchi has forgiven them? No. And the Baluchi feels that he's been treated most shabbily, most miserably, that his resources have been taken. And that is why I'm particularly surprised that when Asim Munir went with this big box
Yes.
and showed it,
full of,
showed rare earth, showed it to Trump, then Trump's aides didn't tell him that, look, Baluchistan is not such a simple kettle.
True.
As the Chinese know, the resentments in Baluchistan are very deep and they'll not go away. But they had this idea that we were behind. So therefore Pahalgam, which was stupid.
Yeah.
And you are right. Anyone would have known that the Pahalgam attack would attract a kinetic response from India. And it did. And they should know that if they carry out what I believe is an attack which will rouse great emotion here and will be considered unacceptable. All terrorist attacks are unacceptable.
Yeah.
But some rouse passions. And if that happens, then there will be a kinetic response.
In fact, Pakistanis are saying as long as Modi is around, there will be trouble for them. Almost every day you hear it on Pakistani television about our Prime Minister. But what I want to understand from you, had this kind of response happened, let's say after the Parliament attack, had a Balakot happened or an Op Sindoor happened after Parliament attack or after Kaluchak, if you'd gone and sorted out their airfields, or if it had happened after 26/11, would it have prevented further terror attacks in our country?
No. And I'll give you my reason.
Yes.
I think the use of terror, Gaurav, is now part of Pakistan's strategic doctrine against India. They calibrate the use of terror. It is a very dangerous thing because the use of terror by one nuclear state against another nuclear state, especially a neighboring nuclear state, is highly escalated. You see, this is the point that we need to hammer to the world. That the first step on the escalation ladder in what the Pakistanis call a nuclearized environment is the terrorist attack. It is not the response to the terrorist attack. but the attack per se. So if the international community and the major powers want, especially the Americans, want that there should never be any kinetic action between India and Pakistan, they've got to ensure that the Pakistanis stop the use of terror and root out terrorism from their strategic doctrine. But I don't see that happening. I think we need to, uh, how should I say, press this far more with the international community than we've done till now.
No, but the international community, when you look at the American reaction, Donald Trump 1.0 and Donald Trump 2.0, they're so completely different. I mean, 2017, was it 18, 1st of January, where he accused Pakistan of being a terror state and looting $33 billion of the American money. And right now, he calls Field Marshal Asim Munir, that fantastic Field Marshal or my good friend or words to that effect. That just goes on to show that their policy is bizarre.
No, permit me to distinguish between the two. He said that in the context of Pakistan's approach to promoting the Taliban, who were giving Americans hell in Afghanistan, and they eventually defeated the Americans.
Yes.
So here was a nuclear power doing things against a non-nuclear power. It is completely different when it comes to two nuclear powers. My experience shows, and this is important, experience shows that when kinetic action begins, then the reason which has led to that kinetic action is pushed in the background. Everyone wants that kinetic action to cease because people get very, very scared. So that is why the time, and in fact, I had suggested in my article on the Jafar Express attack that we should, in March, in Pahalgam, if I recollect correctly, was 22nd April. My article came out, I think, on the 21st of March. And I had recommended there that the government must approach the major powers and say that, look, this is what the Pakistanis are saying. Please warn them that if they start anything, if there's a terrorist action, then there will be a kinetic response and we won't be responsible. The escalation will come from them.
But if permit me to take a slightly different approach.
Please. But of course, we must always have different approaches.
We have been pleading with the world for decades. Stop Pakistan. Please stop Pakistan. Please stop Pakistan. Nobody is scared. Nobody has stopped Pakistan. Okay, fine. So there's a ceasefire, even after Kargil, for example. So there was a ceasefire that was put in place. But then he attacked our parliament. He hijacked our plane. He started attacking our temples. He started attacking Mumbai. And you've seen it all firsthand. What was our response? Right now, at least as an Indian citizen, I know if he attacks me, I am bleeding him and I'm destroying his reputation. Whatever reputation that he may want to salvage for zombies in Pakistan. I mean, I'm not talking about the people who don't even rise when their people are being killed in Pakistan's Punjab province. But we've destroyed 11 of his air bases, including Noor Khan, Sargodha, Jacobabad. We've destroyed Muridke and Bahawalpur, the main terror centers. We've punched holes through his radars, and we can do it again. And I think, hopefully, we will do it again. And hopefully, we will not wait another 5 years between Balakot and Sindoor. My point is, destroy his reputation and do it from two sides. You're doing it from the LC. Let friends do it from the other side.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. Earlier, we used to absorb a terrorist strike. Now, when a country absorbs a terrorist strike, then the world says, well, they're absorbing a terrorist strike. It's bad, but they're absorbing it. Now it's different. Now we're taking kinetic action.
Yeah.
And things get, for the world, then they think things are getting dangerous. So today, if we tell them that, look, if he launches a terrorist strike, we will adopt fully the doctrine of preemption that we spelt out after Balakot.
Yeah.
You recollect that when Vijay Gokhale, who was foreign secretary, read those two paragraphs out, they were
Absolutely.
very significant. So that is what we must, especially our strategic community must press that, look, stop them. Stop, ask them if you want really peace to prevail.
Didn't you say words to this effect, if I remember reading it correctly? Didn't you say exactly this on that tarmac of Kandahar after IC 814? I remember reading words to this effect attributed to you. What did you say, sir?
I think I was in a very angry mood, naturally. Kandahar was very traumatic. I was very angry. And a Pakistani journalist has often written that I'm supposed to have told him that we'll absorb what you've done to us, but you might not be able to absorb what we might do to you.
Or what we
I'm not.
will do to you?
No, what we might do to you. As a diplomat, I'm carefully choosing my words even under the most
Trying
pressured,
to, yeah.
pressured situation. And he's recorded that and he keeps repeating it. Now, what I don't think we've ever done anything provocative, but we've stood our ground and we are now, I'm happy, making it known to the Pakistanis and the world that, look, if there's a Pahalgam, then there will be a price to pay, and we will attack the terrorist centers. And if the Pakistani Air Force or military forces intervene, then we have superiority. And as the Prime Minister has said, we are not worried about nuclear blackmail.
Yeah. And in fact, this operation and both Balakot, Kargil showed we are not worried about the nuclear doctrine, but let's say we were very nascent stages after the tests. 88 was the Pokhran test, 98 was the Pokhran test, and 99 was the Kargil war. That also didn't escalate to various theaters, so that nuclear threshold wasn't reached then, wasn't reached after surgical strike, not reached after Balakot, not reached after Sindoor.
You're right. We've never, I think this idea that the Pakistanis did any nuclear signaling during Op Sindoor is bunk, because I've not seen anything of
But
this
we
kind.
didn't even leave them in a position to do nuclear
No, yeah,
signaling.
no, they did no nuclear
Their
signaling.
command and control structure gone, Sargodha gone, F-16s gone, Mirage 4s could not take off after their
I
airfields were gone. How could they even
in
launch?
During Kargil, we were very conscious that we had just done our nuclear tests. The world was watching us very closely, and so therefore, if you notice, uh, Prime Minister Vajpayee, who who was an enormously perspicacious strategic thinker. People don't realize that he really had a strategic mind. I mean, there was a very sharp political mind, but I also think he had a very sharp strategic mind. He, I think, realized that India has to project itself as a responsible nuclear state. And I'll share this with you. I recollect that the then Secretary of State of the US told,
Strobe Talbot?
no,
No,
Madeleine Albright,
Madeline Albright.
told Jaswant Singh Ji, who was External Affairs Minister, she said, Jaswant, all through this period, you did not take a single wrong step. That showed the skill with which Vajpayee ji, Advani ji, Jaswant Singh ji, Brijesh Misra handled the situation. It was flawless coordination, brilliantly done. And of course, the air chief, the army chief, Ved Malik,
Yeah.
they all did us proud during Kargil. And our boys, I mean, they paid so much of price and blood.
Yeah.
But we showed the world what we were and what our mettle is, just as this time around, I think, on May 10th, the Indian Air Force came up trumps. And it was good that the Prime Minister, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, underlined we will not be taken by nuclear blackmail.
and this the world has seen, and Pakistanis though must have seen. That's why they're pleading with Americans virtually every day. There should be no war between India and Pakistan. And U.S. President Donald Trump seems to be saying
अब वो
that.
भाई ट्रम्प साहब का क्या कहा जाए, उनके दिमाग में कुछ आ गया है तो अब आ गया है, वो 40 बार उसी को राग अलाप रहे हैं, तो अब क्या किया जाए। आज भी सुना उन्होंने
बट
कुछ
द
कहा है।
फैक्ट रिमेन्स कि अगर कुछ होगा तो भारत ठोक देगा पाकिस्तान को इफ देयर इज अ
देखिए, भारत के पास इतनी क्षमता है कि पाकिस्तान को वो सबक सिखा सके, और वो काफी। हमें सबक सिखाना है, हम सबक सिखा सकते हैं। हम ये दिखा सकते हैं कि हम अपने हितों की रक्षा करना जानते हैं, और वो चोट हम पहुंचा सकते हैं जो कि लाजमी है।
लेकिन वो
ये
जाहिल पाकिस्तान,
देखो,
दैट मंदबुद्धि पाकिस्तान डजंट सीम टू अंडरस्टैंड, वो सबक सीखता ही नहीं है
भाई
इतना
उसका
पिटने के बाद।
उसका स्ट्रेटेजिक डॉक्ट्रिन बन गया है। वो सोचता है कि जब तक वो टेरर का इस्तेमाल नहीं करेगा, वो अपने आप को डिफेंड नहीं कर सकता, जो कि बेवकूफी है। आप ये देखिए कि जिस दिन से उन्होंने टेररिज्म शुरू किया 35 साल पहले, उस दिन का पाकिस्तान, जो कि उस वक्त अगर आप देखें तो ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट इंडस्ट्रीज में और उनकी पर कैपिटा इनकम हम लोगों से कहीं ज्यादा थी। आज के दिन वो कहाँ है? वो जमीन पे है, या कहिए पाताल में है।
पाताल में है, सही बात है।
कि हर दिन वो उनके वहां खबर छपती है कि हमें लोन मिल गया, और उसमें खुशी की लहर दौड़ जाती, और हम कहाँ? हमें भी बहुत कमी है, हमें भी बहुत दूर रास्ता तय करना है।
लेकिन अफगानिस्तान के साथ मित्रता बहुत अच्छी बात है, मतलब सिविलाइजेशनली।
देखिए, सिविलाइजेशनल तो अपनी जगह है, ठीक, मैं उसमें दो राय नहीं है, लेकिन गौरव, जो असल है वो सामरिक
है।
हमारे लिए इस वक्त, जबकि अमेरिकनों ने एक रवैया अपनाया हुआ है हमारे पश्चिम पड़ोस के लिए, उस वक्त हमारे लिए अपने पैर मजबूती से जमाना काबुल में आवश्यक है। और मुझे बहुत ही खुशी है कि हमने अपना दूतावास फिर से एक बार खोला है, और जो तालिबान का नेतृत्व है, उनका शीर्ष नेतृत्व, वो साफ कह रहा है पाकिस्तान से और दुनिया से कि हम भारत से आगे अपने रिश्ते बढ़ाएंगे। यह भारत के, ये हमारे लाभ में है, और इसको कोई रोकेगा।
अच्छा, फिर जो लोग ये कहते हैं कि देखो वो महिलाओं को किस तरह ट्रीट करते हैं, आप अपनी मॉरल स्टैंडिंग खो रहे हैं, वो भी तो एक महत्वपूर्ण मुद्दा है।
जो महत्वपूर्ण मुद्दा है, मुझे नहीं अच्छा लगता जिस तरह वो अपनी महिलाओं को करते हैं। कौन उसको, किसको अच्छा लगे? लेकिन मैं ये भी जानता हूं कि दुनिया के बहुत देश हैं जिनमें महिलाओं के साथ ऐसा व्यवहार नहीं होता जिसको आप और हम उचित समझ सकते हैं, या जो अंतर्राष्ट्रीय मापदंड हैं मानव अधिकार के, उस पर खड़े उतरते हैं। लेकिन वो देश धनवान है, तो उन देशों के जो रीति रिवाज हैं, या उन देशों की जो नीतियां हैं,
दुनिया चुप्पी साध लेती है।
दुनिया चुप्पी साध देती है, अलग दूसरी तरफ देखने लगती है, और इन पर नहीं।
अच्छा,
तो ये नहीं मैं कह रहा हूं कि ये वाजिब है,
हाँ।
लेकिन और इसकी भी हमें खंडन करना चाहिए। हमें कहना चाहिए, जब भी उचित हो तो हमें कहना चाहिए कि भाई आप सोच लें, लेकिन दुनिया कहाँ से कहाँ जा रही है, आप सोच लें, आप जिस तरह करना चाहते हैं, ये आपका देश है। लेकिन फिर सामरिक हित होते हैं।
सही। हमारे सामरिक, टू प्रोटेक्ट आवर स्ट्रेटेजिक इंटरेस्ट्स, our embassy in Kabul was targeted. Our consulates have been targeted. In fact, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi was being sworn in Delhi 2014, our consulate had just been targeted. And
in Herat.
Hamid Karzai, then president of Afghanistan, he'd come to India. I interviewed him, and he said Lashkar-e-Taiba is responsible for these attacks. Lashkar-e-Taiba may try to target our interests once again in Afghanistan.
I think we'll have to be very, very careful. We'll have to provide full security. I think the Taliban also will help in this, but that we need to take whatever steps we need to augment our security and to ensure that the people who are there, our officials who are there, diplomats who are there, are provided all the security that they require. But that can't inhibit us because there is very much at stake economically. Also, the Hindu Kush is very rich in natural resources, and we can't allow not to have ourselves not to have a stake in those resources.
Very interesting. Sir, I also want to understand from you. So, your thing is that we should encourage mining that's happening there. They want us to do mining in that area. They want us to help with education, healthcare, military assistance is what they seek. What would you say if there was a request to have some kind of deployment in Afghanistan, a couple of squadrons in Afghanistan or a training division in Afghanistan at an appropriate time, or some kind of a coalition force to stabilize Afghanistan should they need it?
Look, for the time being, I favor that we follow the traditional approach, which is that if the Afghan Defense Forces want training in India for some of their officers, then we should be willing to do that after proper scrutinies, after proper checks. Similarly, I believe that we must be far more open on visas with scrutinies, medical visas, education visas, etc. But naturally, keeping in mind our security concerns. So it's a step-by-step process, and we should not take any action in a hurry. This is a long process. It's a long game. It's not a short game. We are in for the long haul, but we've got to prepare the ground to protect our interests. And I think that preparation, I'm happy, is now taking place, and that we are not showing any inhibitions. And I'm very happy about this.
And I will let that be the last word on this part of the Chakravyuh podcast. We've had historic civilizational ties with Afghanistan. They say Gandhari came from what is modern day Kandahar. They talk about relationship that goes back even earlier. But now it's of strategic importance that we build on this relationship and remain here for the long haul. Sir, for joining me here on the Chakravyuh podcast, many thanks.
Pleasure, Gaurav.